What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today I thought of a topic that I get questions a lot in my DMs, which, by the way, before we go anywhere, I answer every single DM on the Half Wicked Labs Instagram page. Now, that frequent question that I get all the time is pertaining to the compound MK677, often lumped into the family of SARMs, but is actually a growth hormone secretagogue. Before the video goes any further, I am not a doctor. Do not do anything without your doctor's supervision. This video is all for informational and educational purposes only. If by chance your guys' lab rats need anything, check out the link in the description down below. Of course, Half Wicked is going to have the best purity. Just to keep this video simple and straight to the point, we're just going to lump MK677 into the family of SARMs, as you just heard me talk about, even though it's a growth hormone secretagogue. Now, of the family of SARMs, without a doubt, MK677 is going to be one of the most popular, if not the most popular. And for good reason. I mean, there's been so many clinical studies and things conducted around it in overall body composition improvement in lean muscle tissue, strengthening of ligaments and tendons, deeper sleep quality. I mean, the list really goes on and on, right? Essentially, if you just compared everything you were to get from growth hormone, traditional like GH, to that of MK677, they're going to be damn near identical. But the huge caveat and the nice part to MK677 is, of course, it's a fraction of the cost compared to that of, like, if you were to get prescription human growth hormone. Now, with that being said, regardless if we're talking about MK677, if we're talking about aspirin, if we're talking about ibuprofen, if we're talking about traditional anabolics, if we're talking about alcohol, if we're talking about cigarettes, every single thing has some potential drawbacks or just things to look out for. And of those things to look out for, most of them can usually be easily mitigated if you kind of know what you're doing and what you're getting into. So in this, I'm going to be teaching your guys' lab rats how to properly take MK677 the responsible way, so you're not going to encounter any of the side effects or the negative drawbacks of it, and your lab rat can just essentially reap all the rewards that come along from it. The number one side effect that most people talk about, and my lab rat included has experienced, is the increase in hunger. Now, of course, this isn't at all detrimental or a negative side effect, but I do want to just touch on it because if you are trying to cut, or your lab rat is trying to lose body fat percentage, you're trying to be in a caloric deficit, obviously an increase in hunger is going to be probably one of the worst side effects you can possibly encounter. To be in a caloric deficit, you need to eat less, so you don't want to be eating more. Now, of course, it'd be a beneficial side effect if you are in a lean bulk, you're trying to put on size, maybe you have a hard time because you have a little appetite, but you need to get more calories. And then in that case, it would be phenomenal. But if you want to mitigate that hunger side effect, maybe you're trying to utilize it in a cut setting, you have a photo shoot coming up because it does work phenomenal in body composition, or you have a competition that you're going through a prep, just dose MK677 at night. I'm talking before bed. The ghrelin, which is what's making you hungry, is peaked usually like a couple hours after taking the MK677 and thereafter. So the nice caveat of when you take it at night before bed is that you're mitigating essentially all of the hunger side effects because you're going to be sleeping through it. The only time you might run into trouble with that is that maybe if you're like an insomniac, or maybe you're running trenbolone and you have crazy insomnia and you can't sleep, and then you're going to be down in the kitchen just like stuffing your face nonstop. But other than that, if you're a normal person with normal sleep schedule, just dose it at night and you're not going to get the hunger side effect. Number two, and definitely one that people talk about quite frequently, and essentially negative drawback, even though it shouldn't really be a negative drawback because it's usually just people's mineral imbalances off. And you're probably getting what I'm hinting at, but that is water retention. And MK677 doesn't itself cause water retention. I want everyone to understand that in this video, but it will amplify whatever imbalances you have in your body. So let's say your potassium to your sodium to your water intake is already out of whack, and then you implement MK677 with your lab rat, it's just gonna do it even more. Now, the simple fix for that one is really just get your minerals in check. Make sure your sodium intake is in a good range compared to what your water intake is. Normally, most people are ingesting a ton of sodium in all their meals. I mean, majority of foods, if you go to the supermarket or even your cooking, most people are just putting a ton of seasonings, a ton of salt, just a ton of sodium in their food, which is fine as long as you're having enough water intake and enough potassium intake where you're not experiencing this huge imbalance and then thus retaining water. Because I am telling you now, maybe you've never tried MK677 for your lab rat, maybe you want to at some point, but if you're already experiencing these huge fluctuations, some days you're looking bloated, some days you're not looking bloated, that's usually an indicator that your minerals are just out of whack. And all MK677 is going to do is just totally make that even more noticeable. But I want to make this point because everyone blames MK677 for their bloating or their water retention. That's honestly not the case. It's just amplifying the problem you already have and that you should have fixed before you started MK677. I do want to state though, if you're doing like a contest preps, I'm talking about stepping on a bodybuilding stage where you need to be absolutely peeled. I'm talking like where you can pull the skin off and it's as thin as paper, every single muscle fiber, veins, everything. I would cut my MK677 out for your lab rat maybe a couple weeks at least before stepping on stage, just to make sure that there's not any like crazy fluctuations, because of course most competitors and people stepping on stage are going to do like a peak week where they're going to have certain water manipulation they're doing, certain sodium manipulation, and having MK677 in there, you know, kind of changing things up a bit might make it a little bit more difficult to absolutely nail when you step on stage. So just my advice, of course, you know, if you guys have a coach or someone where you're doing it yourself, it's up to your discretion. But I would recommend just kind of, along with also, you might as well throw in this video, any testosterone, enanthate or cypionate or longer esters of that converting to estrogen, which can also cause water retention. And then the third part of the side effect trifecta for MK677 would be insulin sensitivity issues. Now, usually most people run into the insulin sensitivity issues after a long time taking MK677. And I definitely want to make this point. MK677 is more beneficial for your lab rats run at a longer duration of time, because don't think of it like your traditional cycles of the 8 to 12 weeks. You know, you're blasting super hard and then you're coming off and you're doing a PCT, because of course, I mean, MK677 is non-hormonal, but you get the point. You're not blasting, coming off, blasting, coming off. It's essentially just a slow, gradual process, very similar to that of human growth hormone. Like I said, if you compare growth hormone, just compare it to MK677. They're almost damn near identical, because all MK677, the growth hormone secretagogue, is doing is telling your pituitary gland to release more growth hormone. Back to the insulin sensitivity. So people running it for like 6 months, maybe a year, they're gonna start to notice insulin sensitivity. And I mean, that would be a topic for a video in itself, insulin sensitivity, because it'd be incredibly long. Easy way to completely eliminate the insulin sensitivity issues with MK677 is take time off. I know most people have an incredibly hard time, regardless if we're talking about testosterone, Winstrol, Anavar, any cycles, RAD 140, MK677. People have a hard time coming off because of body dysmorphia. They look in the mirror and they see one thing, they're seeing their physique decline, even though it might not even necessarily be true, or if it is declining, it's ever so slightly, but of course in people's heads, they build it up way more than it actually is. And then what do they end up doing is they just hop back on and they don't take time off. So if your lab rat is running into insulin sensitivity issues, cycle off. So if you've been on, let's say like 6 months, take at least a couple months off, and then you can start again. It's really that simple. And also just apply that fundamental technique to essentially every cycle. We're talking about compounds that are suppressive, you know, like RAD 140, YK11, Winstrol, Anavar, any of the compounds that can potentially suppress your testosterone levels. Do a post-cycle therapy, of course, in your time off as well. If you guys need anything, check out the link in the description down below. Half Wicked will have everything you absolutely need. Once again, I answer every single DM on the Half Wicked Labs Instagram page. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to subscribe. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. If this video at all helped you, please make sure to leave it in the comments down below. And with that being said, I hope you guys be safe and I hope you enjoy.